Have you ever noticed that things just keep getting more expensive? Your groceries, your rent, your morning coffee, everything seems to cost more than it used to. That's not your imagination, that's inflation. Inflation is the gradual rise in prices over time. It means the same amount of money buys you less than it did before. If a loaf of bread cost $1 a few years ago and now it costs $1.30, that's inflation at work. And while that may not seem like a big jump when it happens across all goods and services, food, energy, transportation, housing, it becomes a serious problem. But why does inflation happen? Sometimes it's because people are spending more and demand is high, but supply can't keep up. Other times it's because companies have to pay more to produce goods, like when oil prices surge or supply chains break. And then there are times when too much money is circulating in the economy, chasing too few goods. This can happen when governments spend heavily during crises or central banks keep interest rates low too long. There are many moving parts, and inflation can build up over time without people noticing until it hits hard. Let's look at food. It's one of the clearest places where we feel inflation. In the US, the price of eggs jumped from $1.50 a dozen in 2019 to over $4 in 2022. In the UK, a block of cheddar cheese rose by more than 30% in 1 year. In Germany, even staples like bread and butter have become much more expensive, especially during the energy crisis linked to the war in Ukraine. So, how are countries dealing with inflation today? In the United States, inflation hit a 40-year high in 2022, peaking over 9%, before falling as the Federal Reserve raised interest rates and supply chains stabilized. In the UK, inflation spiked to over 11%, driven by energy costs and Brexit-related trade issues that disrupted imports and labor. Germany faced major inflation too, especially in food and energy, with rates over 10% before stabilizing more recently thanks to government energy subsidies and European Central Bank action. In the 1920s, Germany saw hyperinflation so extreme that people used money as wallpaper. Prices doubled in days and life savings vanished. Workers were paid twice a day so they could spend wages before they lost value. A loaf of bread that cost a few marks 1 year could cost billions the next. In Zimbabwe in the 2000s, inflation got so bad, the government printed $100 trillion notes. Grocery bags of cash were needed to buy a single chicken. Venezuela saw a similar collapse in the 2010s with money losing its value almost entirely, sparking mass emigration and poverty. So, what can be done? Central banks, like the US Federal Reserve, the Bank of England, or the European Central Bank, try to control inflation by raising interest rates. This makes borrowing more expensive and slows spending. If done carefully, it cools inflation without crashing the economy. But it's a delicate balance. Raise rates too much and you risk a recession. Raise them too slowly and inflation runs away. Governments can also intervene with subsidies, price caps, and support for vulnerable people. But these policies can backfire if not managed well, sometimes creating shortages or more inflation. Inflation is a natural part of most economies, and moderate inflation can even be healthy. It encourages people to spend and invest instead of hoarding cash. It gives companies room to grow wages and raise prices. But when prices rise too fast, it erodes savings, shrinks paychecks, and makes daily life harder, especially for those already struggling. And when inflation expectations get built into contracts, wages, and prices, it's even harder to control. The world has changed a lot in recent years as pandemics, wars, climate disruptions, and shifting supply chains have made inflation more unpredictable. Even digital technologies like cryptocurrency and e-commerce influence how money moves and how prices react. So next time you notice prices creeping up, remember, it's not just you, it's inflation, and it's one of the most powerful forces shaping our world. Understanding how it works, where it comes from, and how it's managed is more important than ever. Whether you're a student, worker, business owner, or retiree, inflation is part of your life. Thanks for watching. Like, follow, and comment.